You're listening to Conversations with ClubRight, the podcast where we delve into what it's like owning a business in the fitness industry and offer practical insight to help you grow and thrive. It's been a challenging few years for us all, so join us every Tuesday for new episodes where we talk about everything from member retention in the economic climate we're currently in to building a long-term growth strategy for your club, as well as stories of when I ran my gym. So, I'm your host, Wayne Heath. Looking forward to getting into this episode. So, thanks for joining us, Season 2 of Conversations with ClubRight. It's been a little while. COVID's caused a little bit of an interruption, I hasten to add, but wanted to get it all back out there and share some news and changes and ideas and just really ways that people can grow their business. And I think the biggest thing for me is if the new season, as the first season did, allows someone to make a real difference to their business, allow them to change what they're doing today that means their business is growing and being more profitable, more sustainable, to allow their families and revenue to grow. That's what we're all about. So wanted to really go back and share with you some real in-depth information about where I've got to and where we are today. Kind of going back to where I started, I mean, a love of cars is something I've always had, good or bad, and still a huge fan of Formula One and cars going around a track. But cars have been a big thing for me, and I got involved with cars having left college with a HND in business management studies and really understanding what businesses was about, but just followed my passion. So I found myself involved in selling cars. Now, you can have a good idea or a bad idea about selling cars, but truthfully it was an education and baptism of fire, really a school of hard knocks. And I joined with Ford Motor Company and learned an awful lot about how to grow businesses and how to deal with difficult situations and how to deal with people, most importantly. So that kind of journey took me to a point where I became a salesperson, car salesperson. Some people may think, oh my God, a car salesperson, almost as bad as an estate agent. Well, actually, I would rate an estate agent to be worse than a car salesperson, but hey, everyone's got their opinions. But what I think is important is that it taught me about process. And I very quickly, because of my background and how I was looking, became very, very successful doing that job, and then became a manager really quickly within that role. And before I knew it, I was managing a team of 15 people who, to be fair, were actually a whole lot more experienced than me in what they did. Now, some of them were a lot older. I think I was only about 23, 24 at the time. So I was the kid on the block, to be fair, the successful salesperson, most probably upset and annoyed a lot of the other team who were a lot older than me. But it was a journey that allowed me to make a lot of mistakes along the way, learn how to manage people, but also grow into my future job, which then became group dealer principal, where it meant I was involved in not just one site, I was involved in multi-sites. And then I got headhunted by Mercedes. Mercedes-Benz spent a fair time trying to get me on board, and I kind of worked with Mercedes-Benz and thoroughly enjoyed the product. And I think we all sit there and go, oh, Mercedes-Benz, how cool is that to drive one of those? Well, reality, it does the same job, gets you from A to B as every other car. But yes, there's an element of ego about Mercedes, and yeah, nice to have, but it does the same job. And I think the interesting thing I found was that I was drawn into moving to Mercedes, which I thought was a great idea at the time, but it was the same issues that existed in Ford, the same problems, nothing really changed, slight increase in salary, I guess, and maybe ego driving a Mercedes that my mates saw more enjoyment out of than I did in the end. But I had the realisation that actually this wasn't really for me anymore, and I've always yearned to do something for myself, and that's what kind of led my wife and I, Melanie, the pair of us, to open up our first gym, because we've always enjoyed fitness and skiing and being outdoors and just really enjoying life, should we say. But we got ourselves caught in this corporate mess. So I was, working all hours God gave. Melanie was the, headed up part of the HR department. Sorry, not HR department, what am I talking about? Part of PR department, not HR. It's two R's in it anyway. But we're talking about R's and it's PR. But she was involved in PR, and that PR element was all about, you know, dealing with the press and marketing Marks and Spencer products. And of course, we had a lot of good skills between us, but the reality was that we most probably weren't able to put those skills into our own opportunity in the business, which is why opening up a gym, which we did as a franchise at the initial start, and then that we rebranded to our own brand later on. But it was being able to use all the skills and the knowledge that we got from Ford, and when I worked with Mercedes, and Melanie worked at Marks and Spencer. But at the time, we grew a very, very successful gym business in a very short space of time. So I guess the real challenge then was that we wanted to open up our own gym, and we went through a raft of emotions. Finding premises, oh my God, what the learning curve that was. And if I can help anyone with that kind of stuff, give me a call. Because one of the things I didn't know is with commercial property, unlike buying a residential house, so you find a home on Rightmove and off you go and buy it, and you think, like, I'm going to put my offer in, off you go and do it. It doesn't work like that with commercial agents and commercial landlords, because they need to like your property. So I'd go and look at properties, think this would be a great place to open up a gym, let's do that. And then of course the actual landlord will then go, I don't want a gym business in my premises. And you're going, yeah, but I've just offered you the asking price. Not interested, don't want to know. Oh, okay. Then you go, that's the first realisation. Second realisation, you then realise in most towns across the whole of the country that it's owned by about 3 to 5 landlords only. And they own most of the properties. So then you go and look at another property, which is actually with the same landlord that's just denied you the property on the other one. And you're going, yeah, I didn't like you before. Didn't like not you personally, but didn't like your gym business idea in my premises. So no. So that was hard work. So to find a place was hard. We found the right place. It was one of those moments of, I remember quite at a low point. We'd been looking for a property for about nearly 9 months, which was hard. I most probably burnt through the vast majority of any money that I'd had in my savings. We didn't have a car that was any good compared to what I was driving before, but that's another story. It still got me from A to B, right? But the reality was it was tough. We really were at a point of like, oh my God, we've been let down on a couple of different properties, thought we were getting them. In a moment of an arbitrary phone call that suddenly came to me viewing a property, centre of Romford, I walked in and I just knew that was it. That was the place. Rang Melanie straight away. We both got down, we both looked at it, and it felt like home straight away. And that's where the journey started. And the journey was an interesting one because we had to do everything. I was used to having an accounts team that reported to me, a sales team, a service team, customer success team. I was used to having the HR team. Everything in a big business with Mercedes and Ford, I was very used to having all of those things at my fingertips, to be honest. They were gone. But I knew what they needed to do, and I now need to know what they did so I could actually do it myself, which was a little bit of a challenge. But you learn these mistakes, and you have to work quickly and easily and fast to make these things possible. So we got the property. First thing was like we had to refurb that and get the equipment sorted out. And then we had to also think about marketing it as well. And marketing was something I'd like to sort of talk about a bit further later on. But once we got the premises, that was the first point. And that was also the point at which the disaster happened. So I'd signed the lease, not more than about a few days after signing the lease, there was a murder just around the corner from the place that we opened our gym at. And all I did was just sat there, looked at Melanie, and I thought, oh my God, this is great news, isn't it? We've now opened up or got this premises, which we want to open up as a gym. Someone's been murdered around the corner. People aren't going to feel safe to come to the gym. That was the first thing. We got past that and we carried on doing a refurb and eventually came to that opening day with the marketing, which I say I'd like to touch on a bit later. But in terms of opening the doors, we then cracked into the sales, and the next biggest thing that happened was the banking crash. We literally walked into a murder around the corner, followed by the biggest financial disaster the country's ever seen, next door to COVID, of course, but it was a massive impact. And I'm sitting there in 2007/2008 looking at businesses falling and round the wayside, and I'm trying to open up a gym in the biggest financial crisis the world's most probably known. But we still broke through. We still pivoted. We did lots of interesting things, which is all about what I'd like to discuss on these chats, really. But it's interesting to think what can hit you that doesn't actually stop you. So the real interesting thing was how quickly we grew. Our marketing was really based a lot on referrals, but not totally on referrals. It was based on a marketing mix. And I think that's the bit that's really interesting. With marketing especially, so many people get hung up on the one silver bullet that's actually going to make their business successful. There isn't one. I hate to be ruining anyone's thoughts about that, but there is not a silver bullet. There is not a one solution does everything. What there is a whole myriad of stuff you do, and it's a selection of stuff you do that actually makes things work. And quite often you might hear people mention a thing called a marketing mix, and that marketing mix might well be a newspaper advert. It could be a leaflet in addition to the newspaper advert. It could be marketing you're doing in terms of outreach, in terms of handing out leaflets in a shop, high street area. It could end up being something, one of the biggest, best things we also did. We had a smart car, which was totally wrapped in the business colours. And actually, I had a number of people that I think actually tried to drive into the back of that smart car, trying to see the telephone number, the email address to make an inquiry. It was ridiculous. But it is about the marketing mix. And when you spoke to people, I very quickly realised how important that was, because different people pick up on different things. It's not always the one thing you do, it's all the things you do. And that's a big learning, to not get hung up on just going down the road of radio or newspaper ads or whatever you decide to do. You do need to measure everything. That's really, really important, so you can get a good return on investment, because if you don't measure things, you don't know what works. And then when you know what works, you do more of it, because that's really, really quite important. But that marketing mix was something I really learned very quickly. And everything we did was then based also on referrals. Referrals and recommendations for us as a business was a very, very big part of our business. And we got it simply not by asking for loads of referrals. We would ask for each customer, hopefully every member, to refer at least just one person. If they could just recommend one person, if I had 500 members at that time, well, I've now got 1,000, right? So it wasn't actually that much of a difficult theory. Encouraging them to do it was actually really easy, and we had some real simple gifts. I mean, it does make people laugh when I tell people about this, but the gift was ridiculously simple and ridiculously cheap. So we had lots of different branded t-shirts with different colours on them, and those coloured t-shirts were available in blue, pink, yellow, whatever colour you want to decide, but we had a whole selection of different colour ones. But when it came to referrals, you could have or receive a black t-shirt. Now the black t-shirt you couldn't buy. Couldn't buy it for any money at all. It wasn't available. The only way you could get one is if you recommended a friend. So of course it became an interesting point where customers coming to the gym wearing the black t-shirt, other people knew how they got the black t-shirt. So it kind of manifested more people to recommend it, because the black t-shirt was quite cool. It was different to the others, had a slightly different looking logo, bit more glitzy, and it stood out more, which meant people desired it more. And they desired it even more because they couldn't actually buy it, which was actually even funnier. So it actually did, out of a crazy idea, it was the cheapest and best referral process we ever went through. But truthfully, don't try and look for too much. If you're looking for too much out of people, it won't happen. Asking for one is a potential. So we grew really quick. I mean, within 12 months, we were over 1,000 members, which was an incredible goal. It outstripped all my predictions, all my forecasts. to a point where the bank was always happy to be helping and supporting us because they could see how quickly it had grown. We became very cash rich very quickly. And this all happened in a time when the world banking system had literally fallen apart. We had a great product at an affordable price. And then we made the sales process easy. It was not difficult. We didn't overcomplicate it. You can either join monthly or pay up in advance for the whole year. And that was it. It was not that much more difficult than that. And making things simple is how things should be, because people can relate to it. It's really quite important to be able to relate to what's going on and how affordable that option might be for a customer. So yeah, I mean, over 1,000 customers. I think at its height, we got up to just under 1250 from memory. 1240 something rings a bell on the services we had to see how many members we had. And that was customers that came and used our gym 2 to 3 times a week, enjoyed the community that we built up and the membership and the benefits that we had. So I think the interesting thing about running a business, and I think if you spoke to Melanie, she'd tell you exactly the same. Managing people will be the biggest challenge you'll ever have to deal with in any business. Because I'm not saying we should think about people letting us down, but we should make sure we try and engineer the right culture to make sure people don't potentially let you down, if that makes sense. Yeah, so it's kind of trying to do the right thing all the time, but managing people's abilities, not putting any member of the team in a position where they're going to fail, because that's something that isn't a comfortable place for a lot of people. You want people to do the right job, and you want the right job for your business, of course. But at the same time, putting the wrong people in the wrong job just doesn't work for them. And of course, guess what? It doesn't work for you either. So that was a big learning curve. And I think when we started to put together instructors and our team, we went through a lot of people to start with. We did go through a good few people. So I would say, based on when we launched and pre-sold the business, when I say pre-sale, that means we're selling memberships before we open the doors, just to clarify that. But the team that we ended up with 12 months down the road was 50% different to the team we ended up having a year down that road, because certain people came into the role, didn't actually feel it was what they wanted to do, and that's fine. It didn't work for either party. But the pain we had to go through, because we still had to deliver a service. So I think that's quite an important point to remember. So you've got your team, you've got different people doing the right jobs, hopefully, that suit them and give them the right level of response back for the business. But at the same time, understanding that those people need to actually think about why they're doing what they're doing, and then having people let you down, I think was the biggest thing that I still, to this day, find challenging, because I'm not that kind of person that would want to let people down. Well, not knowingly, and if I did, I'd do everything I damn well could to make sure I made sure that they were happy. But typically a lot of people, especially employees, don't necessarily see things quite the same as you do. And it's quite challenging to understand that. And in my head, I had a little while to get my head around, as what was a small business owner was very different to being a big business involvement when I was a sales director at Mercedes, for example, because there was different cultures, different people you had to deal with. And when you got members and their opinions of staff's opinions of members, opinions of how the business is running, there's a lot of challenges to go through for the team. And I can remember distinctly a number of times where, as owners of the business, I think, we were left in a situation where someone just decides to not come in for their shift, let someone else down, and there's Melanie who's then going to dip in to sort of be one of those extra instructors to fill a gap. Now, we've got 3 kids who all want to see mum and dad, and we're having to work to whatever time on a shift that we hadn't expected to be working on. So that was tough, because you don't think that other people are going to let you down, but there's a fact, they will. Don't be shy of it, don't worry about it, but you're always going to be working with a team that evolves, that changes, that improves their skills, and as long as you're mindful of that, don't get dragged into it. It's no different to when my first member cancelled their membership with us. what a moment of despair. I just sat there going, what the hell have I done wrong? They've cancelled. You can't cancel. We've got a lovely gym. We do all these wonderful things. You've cancelled. Why? Why have you cancelled? I took it personally. I absolutely took it personally. But what I realised very quickly was it's a numbers game. You've got a funnel. You're filling that pot with more members. You're also going to lose a few along the way. And it then becomes the importance of positive gain in terms of growth or negative gain. So as long as you're in a positive gain, you've sold maybe, 20 new memberships this month, for example, lost 10, we've still got a positive gain of 10, right? It's not the other way around. So your business hasn't shrunk, but you've lost a few along the way. And when you realise that happens, it's the same with staff. You'll lose a few people on the way, and then you'll continue with other people that potentially are better and actually probably even add a different dynamic to the business. I remember one particular instructor, I won't mention your name because that would be the wrong thing to do. She's a really successful PT running an amazing studio for herself. And she just transformed it because she came in with other ideas and other skills. So you should always look at what someone brings to the team. I'm still most probably the worst person to talk about football, but I do appreciate the importance of teams. And you can't have your goalkeeper and a striker both doing the same job, right? It just doesn't work. And that's why it's important having the right team. And kind of thinking about problems that you deal with suppliers in terms of people providing services to your businesses. That can be challenging as well. And it's not always going for the cheapest price. And I learned that very early on. I went for, I think it was actually female sanitary systems. Now this is one idea. So I went for the cheapest option at the time, thinking that was the right thing to do. Then I realised that these bins weren't actually being taken away and cleaned as quickly as they should be. And then you had all the problems and the arguments that I had with, well, you've got a 12-month contract, Mr. Heath. Well, yeah, I have, but you're not really offering the service that you told me you were going to do. You're going to come down and change these bins and do this and do that. And it was quite an important thing because it was important to our customers, and it's one of those things that needs to be dealt with properly. And it wasn't. And I'd actually put faith in a supplier to do that. So an unusual example, but it's an important one because the impact was far reaching because you end up having members complain. And that was when our customers started to go, actually, you need to sort that problem out. Well, what problem? And as a bloke, I wasn't going to the ladies' toilet. Someone probably didn't realise straight away. But it was something that needed to be addressed. So having right suppliers is a real challenge because people can say a lot of things, but it's whether they do them that makes a big difference. So yeah, staff and juggling suppliers can be a bit of fun, but when you get the muscle of it, it also can be really enjoyable. So I suppose it's an interesting point to look at some of, dare I say it, systems or challenges. Most probably is more the point. Actually, challenges are a better word to use, because as we were growing, we had some proper challenges to take on board. We had to start understanding the business better, and we didn't really understand exactly everything that was going on. If the truth were known, we had bits of paper. Those bits of paper morphed into a spreadsheet, which gave us information about our customers and the place where they were recorded. We had things like a portal that told us how many direct debits were coming in, but we were still handwriting, believe it or not, handwriting direct debits. 3 copies, press hard, here's yours. That was like, wow. But handwriting direct debits and posting them out to get them set up, and then checking with the bank to see who's paid, and then not really actually even knowing when someone came in, had they paid. In total honesty, unless you'd actually remembered who that individual was, and bear in mind now, we've got over 1,000 customers, that's a big number of people to manage. So we kind of get forced with understanding how we need to run the business better. And I kind of recognised that we needed to make a change, and we needed to look at ways in which other gyms did that to see what was out there to try and help the business grow retain customers was something that I was very conscious of, because I could see that we were losing people, but I kind of felt comfortable I wasn't losing too many, but I didn't really know, and I couldn't even try and forecast what was happening the following month. I just didn't have a Scooby-Doo. All I can actually do was focus on the fact that, yep, there's been 10 cancellations and I've sold 20, and that's all I could do. So it then made me think about the next stage. So I got to that holy grail moment, I guess. The holy grail moment that told me something needed to change. I started to do a bit of research. I kind of realised that I needed better systems and a better way of doing things. And I then, with the help of good old Google, found that there was a thing called gym management software. And that's kind of where the next journey starts. Next week on Conversations with ClubRight. People know the story of Steve Jobs. You most probably know what happened to me in that other company. I then had a decision to make. I really was following my dream and recognised where we needed to go, but this change had meant that it all come to a grinding halt. We talk openly about mental health nowadays, and I'm happy to share that. I mean, I was in a bad place. Thanks for listening. We really want to help as many business owners in the fitness industry as we can. So if you know someone who could also benefit from listening to our episodes, remember to share it with them. That's really important. I want to get that message out there. And if you're enjoying Conversations with ClubRight, hopefully you are, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.